So best ever listeners, welcome to the best real estate investing advice ever show. I'm here today with Linda Liberatore of Secure One. She had listened to me and Joe talk about my 12-unit properties on Fall Long Friday a few weeks ago, and being a property management expert and listening to me not be a property management expert, she wanted to chime in and give us some advice on how to best, for this conversation, how to best take over a property and kind of all the duties and tasks that go along with that. So first of all, Linda, thanks for coming on and thanks for reaching out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor, Theo, to spend some time with you to kind of go through it. And I thought you did great. So thank you.
I appreciate it. As of today is the 4th. We have 9 out of 12 rents. Okay. So I guess I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm going to head to the mailbox after this to make sure that hopefully we get the other 3 today, and if not, we'll maybe I'll ask you what I should do about that in a little bit. But first, the main topic we wanted to talk about today was when you are buying a new property, how do you go about successfully taking over the property and making sure that the rents come into your name, you're introducing yourself or sending a welcome letter out to the residents, and basically just making for a smooth transition. So how do you want to kind of go about this conversation?
Well, I think maybe but a little storytelling. I guess, as you and I had discussed, I think some of the things that you did were totally on track, and as we both said, the benefit of Joe Fearless, right? Mm-hmm. Of listening to other stories always helps. And I think one of the things I would say is my experience, one particular experience I guess I would draw on is that it's always helpful if you can get a letter from the previous owner to go out as well to accompany yours. I forgot to, I would say that's very helpful. I think, to be fair and to think, as you said the last time on the show, to think in the shoes of the resident, I think that, or from their perspective, right, is that in today's day where people are sending things and scamming people all the time, it's always helpful to have that transitional letter, the one that says, hey, we sold this building, here's your new man, Joe, Theo, sorry. And then Theo saying, here's, welcome to our new building and here's our contact information. So I think that's definitely something. The other thing we talked about is maybe the first month having some kind of invoice, some kind of information sheet. So couple thoughts there, I guess. Mm-hmm. The invoice just kind of saying, here's where to pay, as we just discussed. And then an information sheet, I might be getting ahead of myself, but that's just kind of what we call it, a kind of general profile sheet that lists like what autos, who's in the unit, what's their names, what's their ages, are there any pets? And we kind of call it a mandatory municipality update.
Nice.
A lot of inspections a lot of municipalities are having city inspections now on rental properties.
Are they really?
Yeah, it's starting to kind of creep around. It's certainly an income producing thing. They like to attach they like to attach a fee to it. So it's convenient for the municipality. But with that in mind, seriously, were there to be some kind of local disaster, you would have, it has emergency phone number listed, and you would have some way of reaching out, and kind of like an airplane, you'd know exactly who was seated in your unit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If there were to be something go wrong.
Yeah, I think that first point about having the previous owner send out a letter or an email or something to the tenants or the residents explaining that the property is going to be sold and who is being taken over by would have been very helpful for us, because we had a couple of tenants who we took it over at the end of a month, and so that made it pretty difficult because we had to get rent set up very quickly. I think we bought it on the 24th maybe, so we only had like a week to get rent set up, and we had one resident who called and left like a 2-minute voicemail, very angry at us. I don't know why, but she was just kind of explaining how she had no idea the property was even sold, and just was out of the blue got this letter from some random person, and as you said, a lot of scams going on, so she didn't know if some random person broke in and just put a bank account information on there and said, send me money. So I mean, it's kind of understandable, but I think that would have been very helpful is having that letter sent. When would you have the seller send that? Once you know you're closing and the closing date sent, then have the seller send it out, or should it be when the property goes under contract, or somewhere in between?
Well, in the example that I give in the story, that I would say is, if even they provided to you that letter at closing, let's say your attorney requested it at closing, you would have had the benefit of attaching that. Generally, I mean, you could ask them to do it, but again, you know how people are and
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities are. They're closing, they don't care. So you could wish for that, but if you get it as part of the closing documents, then yes, you're taking it on you to mail it, but at least they see something, I'll call it familiar or friendly. Maybe they had a logo or a letterhead, so it's written
Okay.
on their letterhead. So even if you would have attached that to your initial letter and it was signed by the other owner, or again, you don't see even signatures as much nowadays, but just on their letterhead, something they were familiar with. And that way, if they had a phone number, they could always call for the authenticity of it, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's a good idea. So right when we close on the property, what's the first, I guess, action step that we should take to start that transition process? Assuming that we don't have that letter from the owner, what's the first thing that we can do as owners?
Well,
And then maybe I'll tell you what we did and see if it was right.
well, I think you remember I listened to those stories. So I would just say, in the case that, well, let's go to my story then. The most recent one that I'm thinking of, letters went out immediately, and they were, in their case, I think because of scale, they didn't do a hand deliver,
Okay, they
and
mailed them.
that's, yeah, they mailed them. But that's of course always, especially with the 24th. We recently did one of those too, where when it's at the end of the month, that's tough because you have your good early payers and some of your slower payers. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's most definitely a tougher time. But I'd say getting something out is definitely most important.
Okay. So depending on the size, mail it. If it's a smaller size, like we had 12 units, we just taped them to their doors. What are some of the key items that this welcome letter should say? And then I guess maybe what are some things that you shouldn't say? I've got an example of something you shouldn't say if you want to hear that.
Yeah, go with that. Go with
Well,
that.
so what we did is we put an original welcome letter on there on like right away. I think we put it on there we closed on a Thursday and we put them on there on a Friday, and it just said, here's our name. I actually got a template online, and it said, here's our name, here's all of our contact information. We're taking over the property. Your lease terms are going to stay the same. Your rents are going to stay the same. Only thing that's going to change is the method of payment, as well as obviously a maintenance request, because you're not going to be asking maintenance from the old owner. And I put the rent payment process, which is either send us a check in the mail or this online service we're using, and I had our address on there, and as well as like who to write the check out to. And then we had how to submit maintenance requests. So we want to do ours through email, just because I don't want my personal cell phone blowing up all the time.
Right.
And then I think that was it. I think at the end we mentioned that we were going to send another letter out in the middle of August, so we can go in there and meet everyone and potential and re-sign leases. And then at the time, as we spoke before, and I'm sure people that listen to my experience understand, we didn't understand what the rents were, and so we thought they were really low. And so we also put that we're going to go in there and increase your rent we're going to increase your rent, but since you've been such loyal tenants, we're going to give you a discounted market rate, whatever, but again, whatever that means. And so I did that, and then we got 4 responses out of the 12 by Tuesday, which was a week before rent was due. And so I told myself that I would like to have everything set up a week beforehand, because I know it takes a while to mail a check, and if they're submitting their payment online, set their bank account information up and things like that. And so I sent another letter, and this one was not checked by my girlfriend Marcella, and it was just me, and I'm very like a blunt person, and so I just said, "Hey, I haven't heard back from you. I sent a letter out on this date. Make sure that you either email me or email, or send a check to this address by the 1st, because I don't want your rent to be late." And then that's when I got this call from someone saying that the letter was threatening.
Well, you know what? I did hear you say that about the letter being threatening, and I would say be confident in yourself. I would say, for the listener's sake, I think you took actually a good, strong What's
Hmm.
the firm? I think a good firm relationship, keeping it a business relationship, is what we see people miss the mark on more than
Mm,
anything. So I think you doing a business like approach, I don't think you should apologize for that.
I didn't.
Um, no, but I mean, even, as a theory,
Yeah,
I think that is a good theory, and outlining the terms. Maybe putting the increase on the first one might have been a little bit,
probably.
yeah, right. But to be honest, the scenario we walked through with one of our owners, that was the first order of business. It might not have been in the first letter, but like you said, in your case, the rents turned out to be a different story. But
Hmm.
they had the plans immediately to do that, because generally that does happen when somebody owns a building a long time, rent, and you tenants have been there a long time. The older tenants are way below market rent, so that's
Okay.
common. That's definitely most common. And as we talked about, it's kind of an educational experience to kind of let them get out there and, use your cell phone to Google the neighborhood rents, and it becomes
Yeah.
evident that they've got a great deal. So no, I let's go back to that. I like the letter. I like the idea of, outlining the terms. I think those are important things. If I had to say, what checklist would I include? I would definitely include, making sure you have clear communications on what to do with maintenance requests, what to do with the first payments. And I like that you followed up most quickly. I think that is good. I think when we were talking a little bit about C property versus B property,
Hmm.
and I think it's important to mention that there's some kind of, I'll call it behavioral expectations that you want to put out there, so that people kind of know this is the expectations that, and we always reference the lease. There's no apologizing for the legal document. It is the legal document. Those are the terms. And, you're not trying to be hard or cold, it's just realistic, is that here's the terms. And so I think that I think those were good. I think those
Okay.
were very good.
But I guess before we move on, I guess the question about the lease. So let's say we've got hypothetically, let's say there's
Okay.
a resident who is in their unit and they're smoking, and it says explicitly in the lease that there is no smoking. And as far as I know, if they break the terms of the lease, they can. I mean, I'm not sure if you can evict them or fine them or what you do, but and you said that you reference the lease when you're having these discussions or back and forth with residents. So I got someone who's smoking. It says in the lease. Do I just call them up and say, hey, this is in your lease? Do I send them an email with like a screenshot of the actual part of the lease that says you can't smoke? Because I don't want to be passive aggressive about it, but how do I go about doing that again by being firm and business like, but also not I guess being threatening.
Right. Well, we found one of the best ways we think I'll call it a little bit impersonal,
Mm.
is that we prepare a letter, and we've kept it very brief, just like a one line. There's a lease violation
Okay.
and paragraph number X, because if you do get into legal documents, there are legal documents that you'd have to fill out. You'd have to check your county for sure. That would be like, let's say, a 30-day notice to terminate, or a 60-day notice to terminate, depending on the specifics where you're at. And with this lease violation, if you really have to, let's say, take it to that level.
Okay.
Hopefully you don't. I don't know court fees in your area, but most people try to avoid court. Um, Hopefully at that point the resident will agree it's just not a good match, because that's ultimately, you want a win-win. You know
Yep.
what? We're not a good match. Why don't we give you 30 days to find your new place? Get started. I would say, if you think about human nature, people are very comfortable. So even when they get a 30-day notice to leave, they're not inspired to leave quickly. So that's why the courts end up being the only avenue, if you can't get them inspired to leave.
Okay.
But I would say our letter, we use a letter in that case. I don't know if you want to, let's say, spend the extra funds, but you could easily PDF it and just attach it to an email. But another thing, I'm just thinking out loud, another thing we've been using a lot of is DocuSign, because what
Hmm.
DocuSign provides you, or any electronic signature,
Yeah.
what it provides you in that case is the ability to send the notice and confirm receipt of that notice. So we've been using it for city inspection dates and times where people weren't showing up, where we were using US mail as a reminder in addition to an email. It's like, okay, we're sending an email, we're sending a US mail, and they're still not showing up. So what can we do? So we went with a DocuSign, which was, of course, less expensive, right? From
Mm-hmm.
a business decision, no stamps. We go ahead and put it in DocuSign. It shows us right away when they viewed it, and then of course, then they just had to initial it that they saw it. So it's kind of a nice. I'm not sure where that would go legally. I think you'd be fine. Most importantly, we find the judges just want something that they can print. So as long
Okay.
as you can print that and physically bring it in, they're not going to look at your cell phone, as evidence.
Yeah.
You can't submit your cell phone. Well, here, Judge.
Be nice. Someday, someday, I bet.
Yeah, right. But
Someday.
if you could print up that DocuSign, that'd be an excellent way of or electronic signature. Again, I'm using
Okay.
a brand name, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Whichever one to prove that and keep it very generic, again, I think the important part about the lease terms, and I guess we're in this position probably more than the owners, but I think I think it's a good thing. We have to look at it, let's say legally. We have to look
Mm-hmm.
at it objectively. We're not trying to well, we always say, my job is not to make your tenants follow all the rules and you have an empty building and you go, great job, Linda, I have no more tenants. So you want to get everybody to comply in a friendly manner, right? So I have to worry about retention, but handle it very objectively. And I think if you could kind of think of yourself like that, like the third person, hey, I'm not trying to rattle anybody, just let's
Mm-hmm.
follow the lease. And that's all we're looking for, a little compliance here.
Yeah, that's good advice. Based off of that, I have a couple of, I guess, follow-up questions. The the first one is the idea of when you actually own the properties yourself, right? So I am the owner of the properties. Um, I didn't tell the residents that I am the owner. I said that I'm the site manager. I'm the property manager. I don't own the building, so I am kind of trying to make it seem as if I am that third person. That I don't have any direct relationship with the owner, because I just kind of figured, again, from like a human psychology perspective, if they knew that I own the property, they'd like, oh, this guy has, because I remember before I owned properties, I just thought that the landlords were just, taking all my money and they were
Right.
just swimming in cash, which,
Piling it up.
yeah,
Right.
exactly, which isn't true, isn't true
Right.
whatsoever, because I can't
I
even get
know.
these people to pay the rent on time. But I just figured that's what they had in their mind. So they see me and they'd be like, oh, wow, this guy, they look at me differently if they knew I was the owner versus the property manager. And so I guess, number one, do you see people doing that a lot? And do you think that's a good idea? And can you potentially run into some I don't know, like legal issues because you're technically lying to them?
No, I think, well, I mean, obviously, I'm not sure about the legal issues of it, but definitely common, definitely best practices, absolutely. And I think that, as you said, if you refer to the owners group, I have, that's a term we use all the time. I have to take it to the owners group.
Okay.
And in your case, as you know, I mean, as you've shared, there's a partner, so it's a perfectly, I'll say, legal terminology. In that case, it fits perfect. I have to take that back to the owners group and I have to get something like that approved. I can't make a decision on the spot. And I definitely see that as best practices, because I think that's like so, so important, because I say it in the case of our case, it's really a benefit of our service. And I think it's a benefit that you can provide yourself
Yeah.
as any sole managing partner of a building, is to make sure you're putting yourself, because really, if you compare it to, let's say, corporate America, you go ask your boss for a raise or whatever it is, I want this new chair, whatever. They're hard pressed to give you an answer on the spot, right? They
Yep.
want to take it to whoever, and they want to sit down and figure out, well, if I give Theo a chair, am I going to have to buy 20 chairs? You know. So I think the important part is it does allow you that moment to, think about, well, how should I handle this request, and can I get away with it, and can I give them what they're asking for? So it definitely is really important, I
Okay.
think.
Okay.
Definitely
Cool.
good practice.
Okay. So let's go back to the process. So the first step, the optional but beneficial step is having the owner either give you or send a letter so that you can give that to the residents so they know what's going on, because they likely don't know that you're selling the property, and that's probably gonna, they're gonna be taken back by that. Then you want to send them your welcome letter with rent information and maintenance information and anything else you want to include in there based off of how you plan on running the property. I guess after that, from my perspective, the next step was I was solely focused on getting everyone set up for paying rent, just because it was so close to the end of the month. So I'm not sure if I would have got closing the property on the second of the month if I would have approached it differently. But typically, from your perspective, after those first two steps, what's next? What should the site manager, the owners do next?
No, I think you planned that perfect. And you, like you said, in your defense, absolutely. In the case where we literally just went through one of those end of June to July, and it was a June 27th, I think.
Oh,
Closing.
wow.
Yeah, it was really, really rough. So I think that you can't help but be solely focused on the rent, because that's the most important transition. Because as we know, economically, I just was at a big Chicago meeting last night. We were talking about that. Economically, you can't get behind 500, 700 and expect somebody to catch up. So, unfortunately, people aren't like, oh, I'm all budgeted, I'm all ready for next month. We've had people do that to us with, the first falls on a different day, and they act like, well, you can't expect me to have the money today. There was a 4th of July holiday. No, that's like irrelevant. Like that was a Tuesday. What does that have to do with the mailing? So yeah, I would say, in fact, I would say that was best practices, Theo. If we're sharing with your audience for somebody that's taking over a building, absolutely make sure that you're up front and out in front of that and talking to the rents, because, as we've kind of gone back and forth, economies of scale, 12, whether it's a 12 flat or 24 flat, you need to make sure you have a certain percent of that rent, and you don't want those slipping immediately out of the gate. That just would create a bad disaster.
Exactly. Because my biggest fear was not being, and that's why I was kind of extra aggressive, because my fear was I didn't want people to, especially with the demographic, I didn't want them to get comfortable thinking like, oh, there's just this really soft guy who took over this property, who's passive and is not going to, pursue us hard for rent. So we can just send him in on the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th or whenever. It doesn't matter, just because he's this young guy and is not gonna do anything. So I wanted to make sure that I was like, set a precedent up front. It's like, no, we're gonna go after these rents really hard. Like we understand that it's really close to the month. It'll be kind of lenient this month, just because the online process was kind of confusing and people didn't understand that, and I didn't really know that they'd be charged a 2.5% fee for they're using their debit cards. And so of course I had people calling me like after rent was due saying, oh, there's this fee, I don't want to pay it, like what else can I do? I'm like, oh, you can mail it, don't worry about late fees this month, but next month you have to be in by whatever your lease says. Some of them are by the 3rd, some of them are by the 5th, which I never really understood that, because if rent's due on the 1st, why do they have until the 3rd or the 5th to pay it? But I guess that's a different conversation.
No, that's a good, let me jump in on that. I like that you brought that up, because you know what? You always want to be bringing them back to the fact that rent is due on the 1st.
Okay.
Because that is something, I'll call it, I don't know, visual something, psychological with people, that they automatically adopt that later date, that 3rd and their 5th. And where the problem comes in is you wouldn't really mind if you got it by the 3rd or the 5th, let's face it. But once their mind thinks it's the 3rd or the 5th, the calls for the 7th to the 10th don't become a problem at all, because they think they're stretching the due date. So you always want to be circling back to the 1st. Okay. Well, your due date is the 1st. Your due date is, and just a little, I'll call it a little known fact. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't. When it comes to, let's say, legal notices, giving out a legal notice because somebody didn't pay their rent, even though there is a 3-day grace period in most, and I will never say all because there's so many county and municipality rules, but in most counties, and we work nationwide, and not that we have one in every single one, your legal notices are, I'll call it legal, to distribute on the 2nd day of the month. So it doesn't matter if there's 5-day grace. You're still able to give the non-payment notice. So if there's somebody you really are having a problem with, there's no reason for you to sit around and wait till the fifth comes. If you know they're not going to pay, then you walk right up on the second and give that notice.
And is that something
So,
that you just post on their door,
well, no,
knock, and
well,
give it to them?
and again,
You're served.
yeah, they have to be served. Yeah,
Okay.
most states, you can certified letter, if they sign for it. But in my opinion, that's like you may as well take that $5 and burn it because nobody's going to sign for the letter that comes from Theo because they already
Yeah.
know what this letter is. So you definitely want to, if it's a true, here's what we say. If it's not a problem person, you could probably get away with hiring some, I'll call it local, ambitious college student in the area that's responsible, that is willing to sign their name that they gave it to that person. If it really becomes a battle, you may want to use a process server.
Okay.
Generally, they may cost you, let's say, $50, which is a lot if you're using it as a behavior changer. But if you're using it to really chase down somebody that's a problem, they're usually well worth it because they'll usually make multiple attempts for that. They know how to hide in the bushes.
Yeah.
They're good at their job if you really have to get to that point, you know.
Okay. Yeah, because I guess that was my second question, and I'm sure this is kind of how the process goes, especially in the first month. Is what do you do if you don't have people paying rent? Like, what happens if the 3-day grace period or the 5-day grace period goes by, and maybe you can do two different situations. One where you have made contact with that person, where you put a note on their door and you go back and see the note's gone, so you assume they had it, or they called you, or they emailed you, or something. Or if they just you haven't heard from them at all, and which we've heard from everyone for us, but maybe someone that's listening has had a situation where they've taken over a property and they've done the letters and just they didn't hear anything, and by the 5th of the month, no check in the mail, no anything. What do you do specifically on the first time through? I mean, do you start serving notices right away, or what do you do?
I would, and I have to tell you, I really think that's important, and believe me when I say it, I would deliver that with, I'll call it a smile, not as bad news. And here's one of the reasons I hope I can give you to help you, let's say, change your frame of mind, because you're not necessarily wanting to go to court,
No.
but you are trying to say this is expected behavior for this building. And we need to agree to disagree if this is not going to be a plan that works for you, because sometimes it's a major disruption. If it was a building that really had been let go, mismanaged, and nobody cared, you're really rocking somebody's world to the fact that truly they may not want to be there. But otherwise, let's just talk about it in a good scenario. Those legal notices, if there truly is a problem in their life, they can go to any charitable organization that is helping them, specifically for rents, but they cannot go without those 5-day notices. So if you think about the
Okay.
world we live in right now, if I'm a charitable organization and you come into me and Theo, you go, I can't pay my rent. I go, oh, sure, let me give you, what do you need? $1,000? No, I need some proof that you can't pay your rent. What is that proof? It's that legal document. So you have to say it like, hey, Theo, I really like you. I really hope I can keep you. So here's your 5-day notice. You have to, deliver it with a smile. Like, I've been told that this will really help you get the assistance you need. Now, I don't know, and we
Yeah.
and again, here's where it's easy for us, but it might be a term you could adopt. We always say, this is just not a landlord issue. This is, family, friends, charitable organizations, but it's not a landlord issue. You know what I mean? So we realize you may have run across some financial times, but definitely you gotta, and this is I think the hardest part when it's your own building is it's just really hard to do that to people because you want to help them. But you have to really start right off fresh with realizing I can't be everybody's savings and loan.
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
I can totally. I mean, we are already falling into that trap where during the inspections we'll go in there and just while the inspector's kind of walking through, where you'll start chatting with the tenant and they'll start telling you their story about whatever. And
right.
we've got one specific situation with that, and we at first we were like, oh, we literally left the unit. We're like, we can't raise this guy's rent. We can't evict this guy. We can't do anything because the story's so sad.
Yeah.
But then you kind of it happens over and over and over again, and it's tough. I can tell it's going to be tough, but we'll at the end of the day, it really is a business, and we have to. I mean, I have to take care of myself, and we want to grow, and kind of the way that we were using in our mind for this specific situation, because it's that smoker I was telling you about,
Oh.
is that, and I think this is true, is that it's kind of ruining the experience for the other three people living in that building, because we can't fix anything up in the common areas until that situation is taken care of, because I mean it reeks of smoke in the building. We don't want to paint anything because of that, and if someone happens to leave, we can't get a new tenant in there because they're gonna walk in there and be like, "What is going on in here? This looks like a haunted house."
We talked about this, and I forgot to bring it up, and I'm glad you can't circle back to that. We said reach out to your local. Otherwise, probably you could do it online too. Look for your local county smoke-free. It's usually like a public health department of the county
Yep.
that you're in. They should have some downloadable literature. And one of the reasons why I think this is so important is because you will find you have those three allies you've talked about in the building. And now
Yep.
psychologically, it's much easier for you because now you got three people going, yes, go ahead, fix this for us, please fix this. And you'll be surprised whether, people aren't, let's say, necessarily aggressive, but if you've put that flyer out there and remind or emailed everybody, the latest smoke-free flyer, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to kind of open the door for their, let's say, affirmation that they'd like you to do the right thing and help them out. So I think it would be a really positive thing to do. There might even be little decals, hopefully you don't need to go that far, but kind of the no smoking thing that,
Yep.
and I think it will just help this situation. And you have to just, because then you'll feel really good about it because you're going to start saying, hey, I'm getting calls. People are asking me to please get this under control. So he or she will feel the pressure of, everybody
Yeah.
wanting this behavior to get changed. And, we talked about that too. You're not saying you got to quit smoking, just get used to walking, whatever it is, 10 foot from the main door, and then, if you want to continue, go ahead and continue, but it just can't continue in this building.
Okay.
I have too
Yeah.
many people. And nowadays it's getting easier and easier too, just because of the, medical issues that people can claim on
Yep.
secondhand smoke and stuff. So I think
Cool.
I think you'll find allies in that. I really do.
Yeah, I think we will too. Unless everyone in the building smokes, then we probably won't. Then we'll have a lot
Yeah,
of resistance.
then you're gonna have
And
trouble.
I think three of them. I know three of them for sure are smokers. I just don't know how many of them actually smoke in the unit. I know two of them definitely smoke in the unit, but one of them was not nearly as bad. I mean, his unit was actually like really nice and really clean. It just smelled. I guess the last question I have, and I think we have to be quick here because I'm not sure if this software we're using is going to expire. I saw you
Oh,
only
yeah,
only
yeah.
40 minutes, but maintenance, I guess, on deferred maintenance, how do you approach that? So just a quick example, really small things like, oh, there's a stove where one of the burners is out, or there's a light bulb is too hot, or there's a hole in my wall. How do you go about approaching that? I mean, do you just go and ask your tenants to make a list of all the issues and fix that, or do you? I mean, do you address everything? What do you do?
I think you have to be careful, and again, I think we have a good role in that because I don't have final approval, right? And so we've learned because of that probably to defer maintenance a little bit better. Probably then again, your heart, you're right in there. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, can't you just please hang this for me? So I am in a good, let's say business-like position because I truly don't know, what Theo might say yes to, Joe's going to say no to, so you never know. I don't know for sure which landlord's going to say what. So we are definitely objective on that, everything in writing and pictures. We recently went through, it is a really quick story, really quick, but we recently went through some really extreme flooding in the Chicago area. I'm not
Hmm.
sure how bad you guys got hit, but we had a number of basements that, were just trashed. It was just
Okay.
awful.
Mm.
Quite frankly, it was awful. But the reality was they were coming in so fast and so heavy that how could these, I'll say, maintenance teams prioritize their day? Well, it became come down to those pictures because there were some that were quite obvious. And I think that little example, if we apply that to you, what will allow you to do is, again, as a businessman, to look over the project, start to look over what the requests are, look at the visual pictures attached to those requests, and kind of apply a business like what's more of an immediate priority versus medium versus low. Like any project plan, you'll be able to take those and then prioritize them, and then provide that I'll call it feedback to the tenant that, I put those in the queue line for the maintenance team. I'm going to see which ones are going to be approved, and we'll get back to you on some dates. Usually, I'd say the biggest thing that we see, people want an answer, and if you at least acknowledge it, put it into a priority list, and then yes, you will have to sometimes go back and say, well, you know what, this particular item isn't covered by the lease. And that's never fun, but usually you could work through that acceptance, by pointing out some other good thing that you're doing,
Makes sense. Awesome. Well, I think we definitely hit that topic hard, and we got a lot of small little tips. But I mean, again, if you weren't doing this, and I mean, you've done it a ton of times, I'm just doing it now, but there's a lot of things that you just wouldn't even think about, that you would just not, I mean, if you have not gone through the process yourself, or you haven't seen someone do it, you don't know anyone who hasn't done it, you just wouldn't even understand. So I think this overarching, what it is, if you can get a letter from the previous owners to send to the tenants, let them know that, so they can let the tenants know that they're selling the property and that it's coming to you, and to expect some information from you or a letter from you. And then you put a letter on there expressing, here's how you go about doing maintenance, here's how rent's going to be paid. And then it seems as if the first thing you want to focus on that first month is setting a precedent and collecting rent and getting it on time. And then from there, you want to start compiling a list and images of all the different maintenance issues, and kind of prioritizing that based off of, is this a direct threat to their health? Is it in the middle of winter and the boiler's not working? Things like that. And then kind of work your way down to, there's a hole in the wall behind my couch that's hidden, and kind of go from there. And then I really appreciate you talking to me. I think maybe in a couple months from now, we can do a follow-up, and I'll have been doing this for a couple of months. I'm sure I've made a ton of mistakes that we can kind of talk about, and then we can maybe go over some more ongoing property management questions, and when to transition from me doing it to someone else doing it, and then go from there. Where can people listening to this learn more about you, or get more information or templates or anything that you've kind of discussed today?
Sure. We still have, we could do a free strategy session, especially with people in these situations. And I think that's at mylandlordhelper.com/Joe.
Okay.
So we could take advantage of that, anybody listening to this. But I do think you said the key things: establish that business-like relationship, focus on the rents, on the maintenance. And I think you'll set a great platform for anybody buying a building that didn't go in it with you. Had a lot of education going into it. Think of, those that are listening that maybe really have not listened, let's say, long enough. If they're loyal listeners, they should be on board. But if they're new listeners, you had the benefit of a lot of education, making some really good decisions.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I didn't feel that way initially, but now that I've gotten the approval of the expert, I feel a lot better about it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Bye.
Bye.